Welcome to the Training for Translators podcast.
Do better work, earn more money, and enjoy your job with our weekly episodes for ambitious freelance translators and interpreters.
Visit our website at trainingfortranslators.com to subscribe to our newsletter, learn more about our upcoming classes, or read blog post versions of our podcast.
Now here's your host, Corinne McKay.
Greetings, listeners. This is Corinne McKay from Training for Translators with episode 3 of the Training for Translators podcast. This week, we are going to talk about applying to agencies. I'm actually going to combine 2 past blog posts in this episode. First, to talk about is it still worth it to apply to agencies? That post was originally published on my blog on June 25th, 2024. And then to talk about if you are applying to agencies, I think you need to expect to contact them between 2 and 6 times. Let's begin with a look at particularly for experienced translators and interpreters, whether it is even worth applying to agencies anymore. So I wrote about this on my blog because the topic actually came up in the monthly question and answer sessions that I do for my online course alumni. And it was such a good question that I thought it was worth discussing here. So I'm going to read and comment on that blog post first. In the more than 20 years that I have been a freelancer, rates offered by many translation agencies, and here again, I have to differentiate between translation and interpreting because I do still have a number of interpreting clients who pay quite well, but the rates offered by many translation agencies have dropped by approximately half. I think there are a few reasons for this. Is it them? Is it us? Is it something else? I actually recently wrote yet another blog post about that, but that's a topic for a different day. Here, we're just dealing with the situation we've got, which is that many agencies have heavily leaned into the machine translation with a human editor model, which you might hear referred to as MTPE, machine translation post-editing. And many of those agencies are now paying by the hour for that type of work at a much lower rate than their translators were previously making. So I give an example in the blog post of talking to a translator who said, look, I cruised along, this is the translator's words, I cruised along for over 10 years, making 12 to 15 cents a word, translating for agencies I really liked. 2 of them have now gone almost entirely to machine translation plus post-editing, and they're offering $25 an hour for that work, meaning that even if I wanted to edit 40 hours a week, which I don't, my income would drop by about half. So I want to pause there and say that my perception from talking to people on the agency side of the equation is that part of the reason for this change, or even a large part of the reason for this change, is the agency's perception that their clients are fine with this model, that their clients are in fact okay with a, faster, cheaper model for a lot of their translation work. Again, topic for a different day. Should agencies be selling this faster, less expensive type of work? But my perception, for the moment at least, would be that many agencies are offering this model because they perceive that their clients are okay with it. Now, interestingly, I do not see this same rate erosion with interpreting agencies. I mentioned in a previous episode of the podcast that just recently I gained 2 new interpreting agency clients who, after I was the first one to say a number, they offered me more than what I asked for. So if you are an interpreter, my answer to this would actually be pretty simple. It's definitely still worth applying to agencies. Why this difference between translation and interpreting rates? I have a few theories, so let's talk about that for a second. And I should say that these may be on target or they may be totally off base. This is just, my back of the envelope thoughts and from talking to various interpreters and interpreting agency employees. Number one, it is just true that interpreting has a higher barrier to entry than translation does. There are some completely self-taught translators who are actually pretty good. They might be slower than people who went to translation school, might take them longer to do the translation, but I think all of us have had that experience of reading work by self-taught translators who are actually quite good. Whereas it is not possible to do interpreting, particularly simultaneous interpreting, if you have not had a pretty significant level of training and practice. I often compare interpreting, particularly simultaneous interpreting, to playing a musical instrument. Like the first time Yo-Yo Ma picked up a cello, he was probably better than I am. He was definitely better than I am. I'm a mediocre but enthusiastic student of the cello, and I would be willing to bet that the first time Yo-Yo Ma picked up a cello, he was way better at it than I will ever be. But he didn't one day pick up a cello and play the Bach cello suites without ever learning cello technique. And I think same as, truly gifted interpreters, the first time that they tried simultaneous interpreting, let's say, they probably already had a tremendous amount of raw talent for it. But you can't do interpreting until you have trained and practiced quite a bit. So it has I think, a much higher skill barrier to entry than interpreting. In my experience, interpreters also exert more rate-related pressure on each other. So whether you want to call that positive energy or whether you want to call it price fixing and collusion, interpreters are, in my experience, much more likely to tell young/new interpreters, do not spoil the market for everyone by charging less. You need to think of the long term and not start out at low rates. I really don't know that I have ever heard a translator say, when you're just starting out, it's better to not work at all than it is to work at substandard rates. And I think experienced interpreters will, give that message to beginner interpreters actually quite a bit. Then the final factor is that I think during COVID, we actually saw an influx of people into the translation profession and a semi-exodus of interpreters, particularly in 2020. So here is just another supply and demand factor. At the beginning of COVID, so think about, say March through August of 2020, let's say the first 6 months of COVID, interpreters who did not have any remote interpreting clients. And at the time, I think that was the norm. There was not a ton of remote interpreting, or they didn't have another way to support themselves, or a lot of money in savings, were really in a bind. And in my opinion, a lot of those interpreters ended up simply finding other jobs and permanently leaving the profession. At the same time, I think that a not insignificant number of interpreters dislike remote interpreting, which has become a really ingrained part of the interpreting scene. I would say here in the Colorado court system, for example, we are about 80% remote, 20% in person. It's really only high stakes stuff like plea agreements, trials, sentencing hearings that are done in person. And basically 100% of my conference interpreting work is remote. Of course, that's specific to me. I know a lot of conference interpreters who are back primarily in person. But for example, I interpret for a not insignificant number of conferences where only the interpreters are remote, or where there is a small number of hybrid participants. So even for in-person or primarily in-person conferences, in my opinion, it's not uncommon to still use remote interpreters. And I think that at the same time, the opposite was happening with translation. We saw a lot of people during, say, those first 6 months of COVID thinking, I either want or need a permanently remote job, so maybe I'll try translation. Now, is Corinne ever going to return to the topic at hand? Yes. Right now, we're going to talk about translation agencies. This rate erosion situation is a huge bummer because personally, I really like translating for agencies. I do enjoy the direct contact with the end client when I work for direct clients, but really, what is there not to enjoy about translating for a client that someone else found that client, someone else manages that client, and someone else bills that client? There is a lot to like about working for agencies, but there is the huge issue of rates. So here is what I would recommend. In my opinion, and again, you are welcome to disagree, it is 100% worth being open to working with translation agencies, even if you are an experienced translator who charges relatively high rates. As an example, last year, I got an out of nowhere request from an agency that found me in the ATA directory, and they specifically wanted someone with Swiss experience. And I'm a dual Swiss citizen, so I work for a number of Swiss clients. They offered me 14 cents a word for a 30,000 word project. They paired me with an excellent editor and they paid me promptly. It honestly was a great experience. Next point, whether you want to be actively applying to agencies, I think it honestly depends on the thickness of your skin. In a way, what is the harm? It really does not take that long to apply to agencies, although you are probably going to have to contact them a number of times before you get work, which is the subject of the second half of this episode. Here is what I mean about thick skin. You need to be realistic about your tolerance for repeatedly hearing that you are too expensive, we can't afford you, quote unquote, all of our other translators charge 3 cents a word. Or, as an agency recently told me, the rate you quoted us is almost as much as we charge the end client. If you are someone who can kind of just let that stuff roll off, then go for it. Like when I started my freelance translation career in 2002, how I found the vast majority of my first clients was by starting at A in the American Translators Association directory of corporate members and applying to agencies. If you can let all of that negative stuff roll off you, do that. If you're a beginner, do the start at A method and go for it. Personally, I find it discouraging and honestly maddening because I get mad at the so-called professional translators who agree to those rates. It really aggravates me to repeatedly hear, we only work with experienced and certified translators, we're quality driven, et cetera, and we want to pay you 7 cents a word, let's say, for French to English, when I was making 12 cents a word working for mega translation agencies in the early 2000s. For myself, I no longer actively apply to translation agencies for all of those reasons. But if you have a higher tolerance than I do for that sort of thing, being told repeatedly that you're too expensive and you just move on and apply to another agency, then I think you should go for it. I hope that these tips are helpful if you are thinking about your own marketing efforts. I'm going to pause here for a short message from Training for Translators, and then I'll be back in the second half of this episode talking about if you are applying to agencies, be prepared to contact them 2 to 6 times before they send you work. Thanks. Greetings, listeners. If you're enjoying this podcast, you should think about taking a class with Training for Translators. You can learn more about that at my website, trainingfortranslators.com. My self-paced 4-week classes, Getting Started as a Freelance Translator or Interpreter in the Age of AI, and Direct Client Marketing Launchpad, run twice a year and are always open for registration. You can also check out our monthly masterclasses taught by me and a select roster of guest instructors. After my recent masterclass on marketing to direct clients and increasing your income, a student commented, "This class was just what I was looking for. It introduced a whole new set of marketing methods and helped me set realistic expectations for myself." I really appreciated that Corinne included both practical steps and concrete examples to support her recommendations. If you'd like those types of results in your own business, hop on over to trainingfortranslators.com and click the Upcoming Classes tab. Welcome back, listeners, and let's move on to the second half of this week's topic, which is if you are applying to agencies, expect to contact them 2 to 6 times before they send you work. And once again, this post originally appeared on my blog on September 24th, 2024. We all have this fantasy. We send off an application to an agency and they respond right away so enthusiastically. We have a 10,000 word project. It's just waiting for you. Are you booked for next week? We have a 5-day conference that needs interpreters. But I'm here to tell you, and you probably already know, it doesn't usually work that way. Maybe once in a while, but typically, here's how it goes. We apply on the agency's website, radio silence follows, and we decide that agency doesn't need me, and we move on. Wash, rinse, repeat with the next agency on our list. I, like you, probably wonder, where do those online applications go? It's easy to think that those online applications go into some sort of black hole, but the reality is they are probably going to an agency staffed by well-meaning people who have other jobs. It's, in my experience, pretty rare that a small or medium-sized agency has a vendor manager or a recruiter who does that as like their full-time job. Typically, those kinds of tasks are being delegated to someone who already has another full-time job at that agency. Even at big agencies, my sense is that the vendor managers or the recruiters are more focused on hard to find languages or specializations. If that's you, if you do Chuukese or Tagalog or scientific patent translation, you might get a response to your application right away, but most of us are not going to. That doesn't mean that the step of applying online is worthless. It means you need to look at it as simply the first step. Here, in my opinion, is the truth. If you are applying cold to an agency, what I mean by cold is you weren't referred by another freelancer who already works with them, because that is always the best option. You are probably going to have to contact them 2 to 6 times before they send you work. Now let's take a look at what are those 2 to 6 contacts. Here is what I would suggest. Obviously, no big surprise. The first one is applying via the agency's website. Unless you are looking only for a specialized type of work that agency may or may not need, in which case I would contact them first. So here's what I mean. If you are, let's say, a Spanish to English legal translator, just go ahead and apply, because pretty much every agency on earth provides that type of service. But let's say you specialize in the museum sector and that's all you want to do. Let's say you are a Japanese conference interpreter, or you're that Tagalog or Chuukese translator. I think then it is worth starting with what I'm going to call step 3. Listen on to hear what that is, because you want to make sure that agency handles your type of work before you waste your time and theirs applying to them. A pro tip I'm going to give you on filling out that online application is this. Use every opportunity that they give you to show that you are a human when you fill out the application. For example, sometimes on those online applications, there's a field with some sort of generic title like additional information, anything else you want to tell us. Don't ever leave that field blank. Put something, add something in like, Thank you so much for the opportunity to apply as an English to German patent translator with and then put the name of the agency. I look forward to hearing from you and hopefully working together in the near future. Step 2. If you get any acknowledgement of receipt other than an autoresponder, reply to it. If a human being responds to your application, even just to say, we've received your application and we'll let you know if we need you, you write back and you say something like you use the thank you so much message above, like thank you for the opportunity for applying, look forward to hearing from you, hopefully working together in the near future. Also, nudge, nudge, nudge. It is on you to keep the ball rolling. You need to be then asking that person, let me know if you need anything else from me. Let me know what the next steps are. Let me know when I can expect to hear from you about the testing process. Always remember that the person responding to you is like really, really busy, and you are one applicant of many they are dealing with. So it is on you to keep that process moving forward. Step 3. If you get no response to your online application, or if you are trying to gauge whether the agency might need you, then I would start looking for the agency staff on LinkedIn. You do need here to keep in mind a new constraint that LinkedIn has recently imposed. Most times, depending on the account level or type that you have, but for most people, if you don't have LinkedIn Premium, you can only send 5 personalized connection requests a month. So what that means is when you click to connect with someone, and typically it will pop up that box that says, do you want to add a note? And whenever you can do that, yes, you absolutely want to do that. But LinkedIn has now limited you to 5 of those a month if you don't have premium. In this situation, you definitely want those connection requests to be personalized. Here's what you're going to do. Put the name of the agency into the LinkedIn search box, then click people, and you will find anyone with that agency's name in their profile. Ideally, you're looking for someone with a title like vendor manager, recruiter, project manager, unless the agency is really small, in which case it doesn't matter so much who you contact. If they have like 4 employees total, you could contact whoever you want. Then you're going to send your connection request and you're going to do a really simple message. Something like, hello, Melissa, I hope you're doing well. I recently applied for English to Japanese translation work through name of agency's website. I'm just following up and inquiring about the next steps. That connection request note can be 300 characters, and what I just read you was 186 characters. So even with a short sign off and your name, that would still fit. Number 4, at the same time, use any contact information that you can find on that agency's website. If you can't find anything else, just email their general info at email address or, translations at, interpreters at. Just use their generic email address. It takes literally 5 minutes to ping them that way. Keep plugging away until a human responds to you, and you could even call them on the phone if you feel brave. Number 5, agencies all have mailing addresses. Here I'm talking about postal mail. I am a big proponent of sending handwritten things in the mail because they really stand out, right? But it is a lot harder because so many people now work from home. But still, the agency itself should have a mailing address, and that shouldn't be that hard to find, either on their own website, in an association directory, etc. So for just the cost of a note card and a stamp, you could write something really simple like this. I recently applied for English or Italian to English scientific translation work via your website. I look forward to hearing from you and hopefully working together soon. Then stick a business card in it. I know. This seems kind of retro, old-fashioned, shot in the dark, but you literally have nothing to lose here. Go ahead and try it. It's certainly not going to be seen as a negative. And to be totally honest, no one sends anything interesting in the mail these days, so your card will definitely stand out. Number 6, wash, rinse, repeat. Years ago, I did a series of webinars for a translation company, and the owner said something that was simple, but I thought was really helpful. When you are applying to agencies, keep following up until you get a yes or a no. With direct clients, you don't want to be a pest because you don't know if they need you and you don't want to keep bugging them if they don't need you. But agencies are totally different. They cannot do business without translators and interpreters, whether or not they need you specifically. Keep at it until the agency responds in some way. And they tell you either we need you, we don't need you, here's our testing process, here's what else we need from you, just something. To wrap up, personally, I could no longer meet my income goals translating for agencies. And again, I'm not talking about interpreting, I'm talking about pure translation. I also have absolutely no interest in editing machine translation. Not because I have anything against machine translation, I honestly don't, but because I find it mind-numbing to read machine translation for hours on end. And that is the direction that a lot of agencies are going. And yet, I firmly believe that there are still good agencies out there or agencies that have bigger budgets for specific projects. I hope that these techniques are helpful if you too are in the agency application cycle. Well, that brings us to the end of episode 3 of the Training for Translators podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please consider rating or reviewing it on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. The podcast is hosted by me, Corinne McKay. It is technologically hosted on Libsyn and recorded and mixed in Audacity using a Shure MV7 Plus microphone. Thanks for listening, and I hope to talk to you in a future episode.
Thanks for listening to the Training for Translators podcast, helping you do better work, earn more money, and enjoy your job.
To leave a comment, learn more about our upcoming classes, or read blog post versions of our podcast, visit our website at trainingfortranslators.com.
If you enjoy the Training for Translators podcast, please tell your colleagues and friends about it and leave us a review in your favorite podcast app.